Welcome to A Changed Life. This is a podcast about choosing differently, how you think, how you relate, and how you lead yourself. Here we focus on the inner shifts that create real momentum and open up what's possible next. Welcome back to the podcast. This is Elise. I'm really glad that you're here. Today's episode is a doozy. It is titled, What Are You Feeding? What I want to ask you is something that might feel confronting. And if it is, just hang in there. Truly, just hang in there, because confronting and getting activated or agitated is not a bad thing. It is actually revealing something to you. So hang in there if you feel some sort of way. If you look at your life, not the highlight reel, but the patterns, what are you feeding? Because whatever you're feeding is growing. And if something in your life has not changed for years, whether it's relational, whether it's your career or your business, your money life, your finances, your health, we have to be brave enough to ask, what am I strengthening without realizing it? And before I get into this next part, I have to say this very clearly. What I'm talking about today is not about blaming yourself for what happened to you. It is not your fault what you were born into. It is not your fault who betrayed you. It is not your fault what cards you were dealt. But my mom said this years ago, and it stayed with me decades ago. It's not the cards that you're dealt, it's how you play them. That's reality. Because after the event, after the betrayal, after the setback, after the health issue, what you feed next determines what grows. And this is where we become both the problem and the solution. Not because we caused everything, but because we carry it. And how we carry it matters. So let's get specific. Let's say you're in a relationship that feels stagnant and stuck. And you hear yourself saying, either out loud or in your head, we have had this conversation 1,000 times. Nothing really ever changes. We always end up here. Now pause. What are you feeding? Are you feeding repair, new skills, curiosity, boundaries, standards, growth within that relationship? Or are you feeding proof that they don't change, resentment, scorekeeping, replaying old stories over and over? Or have you become a collector of all the evidence mentally? Because here's the uncomfortable truth. If for 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years, the dynamic has not shifted, you're feeding something consistently. Maybe you're feeding avoidance. Maybe you're feeding control. Maybe you're feeding martyrdom. Maybe you're feeding the fear of leaving. Maybe you're feeding the identity of the one who puts up with everything. That doesn't make you bad. It makes you consistent, and consistency grows outcomes. Think about that. Consistency grows outcomes. Let's look at this from the lens of your career. You've had 3 jobs in 10 years. Everyone starts out great, hopeful, promising, and everyone ends the same way. You feel undervalued, overworked, unseen, paid unfairly, and eventually you say, this always happens to me. Now we pause again. What are you feeding? Are you feeding skill development, clarity about what you actually want, negotiation for what it is that you want, taking risks, speaking up, ownership, authorship, self-leadership? Or are you feeding the belief that no one recognizes your value? The story that you're always overlooked? The story that you're the one that's really reliable and always goes the extra mile? The comfort of complaining but not repositioning yourself? And this has been my story. So this is something that I really had to look at and really look at what was I feeding. Because here's the hard truth. If the same dynamic repeats across environments, the common denominator is not the company. It's what you're rehearsing internally. And rehearsal, like consistency, is feeding. So how do you know what you're feeding? This is where we get really practical. You know what you're feeding by asking these 4 questions. What do I talk about the most? What do I think about the most? What do I rehearse in my head the most? And what do I look for evidence of the most? If you're constantly scanning for disrespect, you will find it. If you're constantly scanning for rejection, you will find it. If you're constantly scanning for what's missing, you will find it. Your brain is obedient. And that is exactly the way that it works. It finds what you train it to find. And this is not bypassing, this is redirection. So again, I'm going to say this really clearly. Feeding what you want does not mean ignoring what hurts. It does not mean denying betrayal. It does not mean tolerating mistreatment. It does not mean suppressing your anger. It means that after the problem is named, you don't build your home inside of it. You might visit it, you work on it, you metabolize it, but you don't feed it indefinitely, because if you do, it becomes your identity. And identity shapes behavior. And I'm going to invite you to play that again, because that is such an important message to really sit with and contemplate. So how do you feed the right beast? This is the part everyone wants to know, right? You don't change everything overnight. You change what you strengthen. So here is your rewire for this week. When something frustrating happens, you got to pause here and ask, what am I feeding right now? Be honest. Are you feeding into the problem? Are you eating up the problem? And I want you to ask, if I fed what I actually want for the next 15 minutes, whether that's in your head or in the conversation or in your health or in your finances, whatever the landscape is, if you fed what you actually want for the next 15 minutes, what would that look like? If you want connection, you feed repair, not looking for proof. If you want financial growth, you feed a skill, not complaint. And complaining about your life at work or your career, your job or your boss, your coworkers or the company. If you want health, you feed discipline, not excuses. Small shifts, repeated consistently over time, that's how alignment changes. So, I'm going to give you a pattern test. If you have a repeated pattern over years and nothing has shifted, you are feeding something. And here's the empowerment part. If you fed it once, you can feed something else. You're not stuck. You're practiced. And practice can change. So, be brave, be willing to look at and ask yourself, what's been a repeated problem in my life? Maybe it's your weight, and you've struggled with your weight your whole life. Maybe it's money, whether you've had it or didn't have it. It didn't even matter if you had it or didn't have it. You still struggled with it. Whether the struggle was in your mind, whether the struggle was in your account, it's still a struggle. Maybe it's a relationship that you've been in for years and years. It could be with a mother, father, sister, brother, partner, friend. And there's been this consistent pattern. Look and see, where are the patterns in my life? And am I feeding that more than I'm feeding what I actually do want? What am I focusing on more? The behavior, the pattern, the situations that I don't want, or living in the frequency and the energy and the vibration and the conversation and the thought patterns and the rehearsal of all of the things that you do want. You got to get honest about that. You're not the victim of your patterns, and you're not doomed by history, but you are responsible for what you strengthen. It's like a radio signal. Are you going to tune in and strengthen all the stuff that you don't want? Or are you going to change the channel and go get on a channel, get on a frequency, get on a vibe, get in an energy of what you want? You are the problem and the solution, not because life is fair, but because your focus is that powerful. And whatever you consistently nourish becomes your normal. Think about that. It actually starts to become normal. As much as you may not like it, it's actually what your baseline in that situation has become. So as you move through your week, notice what you're rehearsing. Notice what you're scanning for. Notice the conversations that you're having in your head. Notice what you're loyal to in your thinking, because whatever you're feeding is growing. And a changed life doesn't start with better circumstances. It starts with better nourishment. What you feed will grow. If something in this episode was helpful for you, I want to encourage you to share it with somebody else. Either share the podcast with them or share, I heard a podcast and this was what I got out of it, because that will help your deepening, your deeper understanding of what this podcast was all about. It will serve you greatly in developing your neural pathways towards the things that you truly want, and it will help you and it will serve another. And I will be back with another episode really soon. I hope to see you there. If something in today's episode resonated with you, you'll find a link in the show notes to book a free consultation call. Or you can visit elisecraft.com to explore my programs and free resources. Nothing changes until you do. And when you do, everything does. This is a changed life. Not all at once, but for good.